You get your bill out.
I did about 30 seconds. Matt goes, Brother Smith. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brother Smith, they just ran me right out. We used to be delegation right there. They just ran me right out of that.
We will have a sign-up sheet up front in just a couple of minutes for anybody who wants to speak for or against the measure to sign up. So just a couple minutes, she's going to the next room to pick it up, and I'll get your stuff handed out.
Father, we just thank you for this day that you've given us. We thank you for this committee, and we pray that we seek your guidance and your wisdom in all that we do, and that you find what we do acceptable in your sight. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. At this time, the Environmental Quality Subcommittee of the Natural Resources Committee will, we have one meeting, one measure on the agenda today, and that's House Bill 477. Chairman Leverett, will you come to the podium and tell us about your bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you about House Bill 447. It's a bill that has been the result of some discussion and collaboration and a fair amount of effort to try to address some issues with, not really with the soil amendment program, but just with some enforcement concerns that we have. I think some of the members of the committee may be aware this is a program within the Department of Agriculture, and it's managed by Ag. It's been around for a long time, and just to make sure you understand my position on it, I think it's a vitally important program that needs to be protected and furthered and fostered. It's essential to the operation of agriculture and some other industries in the state, and so it's very, very important. And frankly, conceptually, it's a really good program. We take things that are, in some cases, waste, and we apply them in a manner where they're back at the beginning of the food process, where it's useful effectively as fertilizer. It's not regulated as fertilizer. It's not classified as fertilizer. It's actually classified as something that will change the properties of the soil. But it's a very good program. So I hope you understand I'm not bringing this in an effort to harm the program or cease its operation. I think it's vital. I do feel like this measure is intended to help the program because there are some bad actors, which, that's arguably the whole reason we have to come up here every year is because of that, no matter what kind of industry or activity we're talking about. And it's intended to try to assist the department in its enforcement mission with respect to soil amendments. So the bill does not deal with any of the technical aspects of application of soil amendments. It doesn't deal with manner or rates of application, frequency of application, or any of those kinds of matters, which I think tend to be more, so we say, agronomic in their nature. That relates more to soil science and other science disciplines, so I don't profess to have any expertise in that sort of thing. The department has been promulgating some regs in response to some previous legislation that the House has passed, and we're generally happy with those regulations. The concern is the manpower that the department has to enforce the regulations. It's like they say, a couple of bad apples spoil the bunch. We've got a lot of businesses that are applying these things responsibly in accordance with the regulations. But the program itself, because of a lack of manpower, it relies to some extent on sort of the honor system. And when there are issues, it's oftentimes difficult to get individuals or personnel from the Department of Agriculture to be able to respond in a quick and timely manner just because of the simple fact of geography. I don't think we employ Bewitched or Scotty, so we can't blink ourselves from Atlanta down to Jefferson County or Elbert County or have us beamed out there. They've got to actually travel, and frequently by the time they're able to get there to respond, the violative acts have long ceased. So what we proposed in the bill were two tools that we thought would help the Department of Ag in their enforcement mission. One was modeled after the timber harvesting notice that the House passed several years ago. It would just allow counties to pass an ordinance, and if they pass this ordinance, then anyone who applies soil amendments in that county would have to make a filing on this statewide portal that the Department of Ag would develop. There would be, a fee associated with it. It's not a permit. You do have to do it to apply, but it's not like someone's got to review it and comment and issue corrective action. It's simply for notice, so that if the county gets calls, they could look on the website and at least know where it's happening and who was doing it, so they could contact the appropriate people to to relay that information to the state, or if the second part of the bill were adopted, they could take some very limited enforcement action. And just to talk a little bit about process, I did have a meeting. I've tried to be collaborative and engage, the industry on this, and I appreciate they have likewise engaged me, and they've been responsive, and I appreciate so much the Poultry Federation and a lot of the people who are actually in the business and the Department of Agriculture for meeting with us and commenting on an initial draft of the bill that I had. I made a number of changes to that first part about the notice provision, and I think there's some additional ones I've since discussed that we're certainly willing to make. I think the real controversial part, to be very blunt about it, is Section 2. Because in that section, the Department of Ag would set up a program in which they could delegate to certain counties. If the county passed an ordinance and indicated a willingness to do this, they would designate a person who could assist with enforcement of these regulations, and that person would have to attend some training and would be subject to certain rules and credentialing by the department. And then that specific official with the county would have the authority to do very limited enforcement action. If someone was not blading in or subsurface spraying the soil amendments, because soil amendments are not supposed to be just spread out of a gun or like a sprinkler onto the ground. They have to be actually injected below the surface, and there's machinery that does that. It's very common, and you're not supposed to spread in the rain for obvious reasons. And so it would allow this designated county official to issue a cease and desist order in those very limited circumstances. They also would have to then report to the Department of Ag, and the cease and desist would only last for 48 hours. And of course, some of those criteria are subject to further amendment if I get input to that effect. I'm not trying to push this down anyone's throat. I'm trying to do something that would work and would work in the real world. And so that's basically what the bill does. So it attempts to address concerns that I heard last year, because I had another bill like this that would provide that counties would have concurrent jurisdiction, meaning they could enforce all the regs along with the Department of Ag. And that, I think, was not, shall we say, that was seed that fell upon rocky ground and could find no purchase. It was not very well received. I think because of the legitimate concern that many people in the agriculture industry, and especially in the soil amendment and application business, are concerned about. They don't want to have to deal with 159 different sets of rules. So that bill, nor does this bill, propose to give any kind of rulemaking authority to any county. This bill basically says the Department of Agriculture will establish a program where they can delegate to counties that comply with certain conditions and let the counties just do very limited enforcement, only in very limited specific circumstances. I think that is still, to be quite frank, not satisfactory, and I know we'll have some folks talk about why they don't like that, but we believe some additional action is required just because we're concerned that some of the bad cases that have happened are going to build some sort of public sentiment against the program, and we don't want that to happen. We want to keep the program healthy, and we want to be fair to the people who are doing it right, because this happens a lot throughout the state, and we don't hear about those because they're doing it appropriately. They're complying with the regulations. So we want to be fair to them as well by trying to get on top of the bad actors. So that's kind of the gist of the bill. I think there are a number of people here who would like to speak to it, who have experienced some of the consequences of people applying soil amendments improperly. And so they can kind of give the committee an idea of what that's like. But our goal here is not to kill the program, not to stop the program, but to help it and to help Department of Ag by allowing them access to some resources on the county level that the counties are willing to provide. I mean, this is an unfunded mandate I think certain counties will welcome, the bill would not impose it on any county that does not want to do it by complying with those conditions, including passing an ordinance to indicate they're willing to do it. So we hope this will kind of relieve a little pressure. I know I also want to thank Chairman Penny Houston and Chairman Matt Hatchett for putting in the budget some additional funding for enforcement of these regulations, and I appreciate the Department of Ag joining in that request. So again, this is not because we're unhappy with ag. I think they're doing what they can, and the commissioner has indicated a desire to review this program and get on top of the enforcement issues. Understandably, he's not been on the job that long, and he's got a lot of priorities, to deal with, and he has promised to deal with it. I just feel like this would be some useful tools to him in the execution of his duties and in carrying out the sort of intention he has expressed that he has. So I'm sorry to go on at length, Mr. Chairman. This has been a kind of a long battle we've been fighting, and I'm just excited to be here in front of you today.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have any questions for the author? Not seeing any. We do have one, number 14.
Yeah, thank you for all the hard work you've done. I know.
Well, thank you, Vice Chairman.
Done a lot. Do you know if there are any other methods that are being looked at, or is this?
It's my understanding they are. They're looking at some either. Well, when you say methods, I'm not sure. I don't know that they're methods that are being examined. I mean, one option obviously would be to require pre-treatment. I don't think that's feasible. I don't think that would be welcome at all. I'm not sure that just would work. I do think they are exploring some other ways of dealing with the waste, or of additives that could be put in with it, so that the issues of, because the smell is the primary concern when it's not spread right. And so I do think they're examining that. I don't know where those are. I think they're in the works, but I don't believe it's something that's imminent, is what I've understood. But there may be some witnesses who can speak more to the sort of the technical side of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So we do have, I think, 11 people signed up to speak to this measure. So we will limit discussion to about 2 minutes each, and we'll start with Damon Mullis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just state your name and who you're with.
My name is Damon Mullis. I am with Ogeechee Riverkeeper. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for holding this hearing on this very important matter. I hold a bachelor and master degrees in biology and have extensive experience in evaluating ecological health of rivers and streams and in water quality monitoring. I'm here today to speak in favor of HB 477 and to relay how the current Soil Amendment Program has negatively impacted the waters of our state, and how the program will continue to threaten them if it's not fixed. In my opinion, the number one problem with this program is that the public does not know what is in the materials being used and spread. To this point, the frequency and depth of testing by the Ag Department has been wholly insufficient. But we know from history that some of the materials used as soil amendments threaten our waters. For instance, in September of last year, a pond holding soil amendment materials leaked into a stream in Wilkes County, killing an estimated 1,700 fish. The material that killed those fish was stored to be used as soil amendments. We need to know what is in this material. We also know from experience that this program has been abused, and waste streams that are not appropriate for soil amendments have made their way in. There have been no less than 5 documented accounts of human waste ending up in soil amendment materials across 4 different counties. Chances are those are not the only instances of abuse. What other inappropriate waste streams have found their way into the soil amendment program? We need to know what's in this material. We have also seen photographic and video evidence of haulers spreading soil amendments on saturated fields during heavy rain events and spraying the amendments over land instead of injecting them. We have also heard reports of apparent over-application, with tanker after tanker going into small fields around the clock 24 hours a day for many, many days in a row. We know from the Wilkes County fish kill what can happen when these materials make their way into our streams. This abuse, the inappropriate waste streams, improper application, over-application, it must be stopped, and we still need to know what's in this material. The use of soil amendment program is widespread in Georgia, in many of the areas receiving soil amendments in or near aquifer recharge zones. I'll finish up. These are the areas that fill our drinking water, and estimated 95% of rural Georgians get their drinking water from groundwater. We need to make sure it's protected. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Angela Walden, if you'll state your name and who you're with.
Hi, I'm Angela Walden, and I am a concerned citizen about the soil amendment, and I am in favor of HB 477. I'm from Jefferson County, where I've lived my entire life. My family farm is located outside of the town of Avra, and it's been in my family since 1830. We raise beef cattle, and we produce hay for sale. This practice of soil amendment is infringing on our rights as citizens of this country, and our freedom to enjoy our property is being stripped away. We should not live daily in fear of what this careless disposal of industrial waste is doing to our health, to our property, and to our livestock. It is not soil amendment, it is industrial waste disposal. Our nightmare began last July when our neighbor decided to apply this waste to his pasture, and it continued for 69 days. It amounted to 2.5 million gallons of waste spread on less than 100 acres. During the same time frame, another site 2 miles away received approximately 10 million gallons. These massive quantities are not soil amendment, as you can see. Throughout the horrible 10 weeks of waste spreading, my 79-year-old father, he could no longer enjoy his farm that he'd worked on his entire life. He was unable to go outside to check on his cattle without the swarm of biting flies and the horrible smell of death surrounding him. Even feeding his outside pets was unbearable because of the environment that was created by this putrid waste. My family and neighbors also suffered with headaches, nausea, burning eyes, throat issues, and fatigue. My husband, who operates our farm, was affected even more significantly. After several weeks of testing, an endocrinologist diagnosed him with thyroiditis and stated that it was due to the exposure of environmental stimuli from the waste. Environmental toxins, including heavy metals, have a significant impact on thyroid function. In communities with active spreading, children can no longer play outside, families can no longer do any type of outside activity or gathering. Just simple things such as going to the mailbox or bringing in your groceries become a miserable task. Farming communities are accustomed to normal farm smells. We're used to manure and livestock and chemicals and real fertilizers. Rural Georgians are suffering. And as spoken earlier, you have to understand the amount of volume. We're talking 10 to 30 tankers a day are coming into these small rural county roads. I want to say, I know my time's running short, but what concerns us most is not what we can see, it's not what we can smell. It's what we can't see that scares us the most. A fence line does not stop the bacteria that are being released into the air, nor does it prevent this liquid from seeping into our water table. I'll skip out a lot since my time is short here. I do want to end with this. The large corporations, they should bear the responsibility to do what is right by disposing of their own waste in specialized landfills, not in our rural communities. The poultry industry and the soil amendment registrants are being protected. It appears that all parties involved are choosing to put rural Georgians' health at risk, destroy our quality of life, and contaminate our water and our soil and our livestock. A line has been made, and it's us versus the financial interest of these large corporations. I'm a victim. My family is a victim, and I'm speaking for all of us throughout Georgia that are dealing with this every day. And I ask that you make positive changes to protect rural Georgians and stop these communities from becoming waste dumping grounds.
Thank you. And we are going to we need to try to stay to the time limit because we have a meeting that's right after us to make sure everybody gets to be heard. But thank you for your comments and just for everybody else so we can get everybody heard. So Kathleen Bowen.
While they're walking up, I'll just say I'm Kathleen Bowen from ACCG. We appreciate Representative Leverett for bringing this bill, and we certainly appreciate your time to educate you on this topic. We've got John Graham here, the chairman in Warren County. We have the chairman, Sam Moore from Wilkes County, and then we have Chairman Jay Powell from Oglethorpe County is here as well. So.
Thank you to the committee. We appreciate y'all taking the time today, and thank Representative Leverett for all his hard work. 3 years ago, I didn't have any issue with soil amendments, but it hit my town pretty hard and quick. Had an LLC, bought up 4 tracts of land and started putting this stuff out. And then I started talking to Sam and some others around me and found out they've been dealing with it for years. And in the last 3 years, it's spread from Warren County to Glasscock to Hancock on down the line. So, but when this started happening, everybody out there, as you heard about the problems, you had the smell and all that, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. It was like we had started talking about having a landfill in the county, as y'all know how that goes. But anyway, there was all kind of problems. They couldn't, no quality of life any longer. They couldn't go outside. They sent me pictures of buzzards all over the place. They sent me pictures with fly strips that they had put out because flies were just everywhere, just caked. So we, they was like, what can you do? We need help. And we was like, we're calling Department of Ag, and because we really got our hands tied. And so for us to have some kind of enforcement would be great. We'd be glad to help. I think there's already something we can look at. We, as local coalition authorities, help EPD with soil erosion and sedimentation. So I think that's a good way to kind of look at, we already do some local stuff for our state agency. I think we should be able to kind of look into this. Of course, there's training required. I think we got extension agents in our counties that could help probably work on some of these issues. We want to partner with Department of Ag. We want to be able to have some help to our citizens quickly because they are limited in the amount of people they have. And as this spreads, like I said 3 years ago, it wasn't in our area. Now it's all over our area. And so it's going to be harder and harder for them to continue to keep up. So, that's what we're looking for is just some help. We'd like to partner with the Department of Ag, be able to take care of issues when they pop up, give our citizens somewhere to go. Because right now, when I get a complaint, the Department of Ag wants me to go to this portal website so they can, we make a complaint and then we don't know where it goes.
I'll be very brief. I'm Sam Moore, from chairman of Wilkes County. We've been dealing with this for probably 15 years, and we've had probably some of the worst actors that's been in this business, us in Elbert County, for many years. We've tried this before, House Bill 1057 that Trey Rhodes sponsored with others a few years ago. It didn't make it very far. It was a little different than this, but I want to thank Rob for maybe getting something that we can and will be able to do. We really don't want any power. We just want to be able to report what we get a response back, because for years we have gotten no response back. We could call EPD, we could call the Department of Ag. We wouldn't get any response back really. The fish kill happened in my county. Where the material was taken, they got 2,200 loads in 1 year. It ended up in a little river. It didn't kill 1,700 fish. It killed all the fish. That's just all of them they counted, because it had killed fish for weeks before it was ever seen by some of my residents. Well, it scared the devil out of everybody. I've gotten thousands of phone calls through the years about this. If it needs to be done right. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the program. They're actually putting it out in my county now. It's being done right. I have not got any complaints.
And that was going to be my question. Is that actor still in business, or they put him out of business? The one.
Well, I think the haulers are still in business, but the landowner is not doing it anymore. No, so they were fine. But this is a very lucrative thing. If you take this material, they will pay you a lot of money. And what really makes no sense about this is that they can ride from Hartwell, they can ride from Gainesville all the way to Manuel County or Jefferson County and haul this material. They have ridden by thousands and thousands of farms that did not want it. You just think about I'm 60 miles away. We're talking about a truck turnaround. It's got to be 6 hours from where they're going. How does that make any sense? If they would not got so many bad actors and the government not let them done it so long, I think the farmers that are closer to them would take it, because they're driving hours and hours just to get rid of it. So.
We do have one question real quick, and we're going to speed up a little bit. We got a meeting coming in right after
I could
us, so.
say a lot more, but that's
Yes.
I'll be quick, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I wanted to just emphasize something. So, you're in Warren County. I've got a farm in Glasscock, and so I want to emphasize something. I'm glad y'all are here. Appreciate all the comments. Notice Ms. Walden came up earlier. Avra, that's not far from me as well, over that way. Got a lot of relatives there. And so here's one of the things I want to emphasize for everybody to know as we talk about this, and I know Warren County. So the folks, there's a mindset sometimes that non-rural people, let's say urban people who are moving into, we've got, the whole world's moving to Georgia, right? And so there's a mindset sometime that it's all these newcomers moving into rural counties that are complaining, even though they chose to live in a rural area. I just want to emphasize something. That's not what I've seen. That's not what I'm hearing, because the folks I've heard from about this issue are all themselves farmers or rural people, and I think that's what you know in Warren County. I just wanted to emphasize that for everybody to know, because that's important to me. I mean, I think it does matter, because you're talking about people that are accustomed to all of the different things we do in agriculture, and yet they themselves are offended by this. So I just want to emphasize that. I appreciate y'all being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm a cattle rancher. I own 1,000 acres of land. I put out chicken litter all the time. This is a whole different thing.
Thank you. Neil Harry, if you'll come forward, and we're going to start when the alarm goes off. We're going to have to stop, because like I say, we've got 8 people still lined up to speak to this measure, and another meeting coming in at 4 o'clock. So we want to try to hear from everybody.
Cut on that alarm on your phone. It sounds like the submarine's sinking. That'll get everybody.
Will that do it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm going to go quick as I can. I'm from Neil Herring from the Sierra Club. I've been following this issue in the press and people talking to me about it. And then since the session started, standing right here, the director of EPD was asked by Representative Prince, what are you going to do about chicken waste? And he stood right here, this room, and said, well, that's a repurposed material, and I don't have to do anything about it unless it gets in a stream. And so that sent me to the code. And Kathleen from the counties told me that it's called chicken waste in the transportation code when it's about how much it weighs on the truck. But in the Title 12, the EPD code, it's called commercial waste. And it used to be the EPD got tired of dealing with it, and they got the Ag Department to take it on. And the Ag Department says, well, it's fertilizer. But then the fertilizer people got in trouble because it didn't meet the definition of fertilizer, so they call it soil amendments. And in reading further in that code, I discovered in the public health code that they can actually participate in enforcing EPD problems of water in the stream if they're asked to do it. And so there is a person in each county, used to be called a sanitarian, I think they call them environmentalists now, that does perk tests for septic tanks. So there's somebody being paid to do perk tests. And the problem these people are talking about is putting this on wet ground. And if the ground won't take the water, it shouldn't get this application. There's somebody in the county that can find out whether the soil's applicable. So I think the pathway that Representative Leverett is on can be both constructive and not necessarily expensive. I think we've got the people. We just need to put them to work doing the right thing. Thank you.
You're very good. You had 10 seconds. I do have one question real quick. You had 10 seconds.
Yes, sir.
Number 12.
Thanks, Chairman. A quick question for you. Based on what you guys said right now, so there's nothing right now the counties can do, even with the, like you said, the perk test, the people who do that now?
No, they've got to be able to get – what Leverett's doing is the right thing. Get the county to the point where they can get their Board of Health to get their man out there, test that site. Can we dump it here or not, yes or no?
Okay.
And that would stop a whole lot of the problems that this man right here told me about the perk test problem, this county commissioner here. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Sharma. I'm probably not saying that right.
All right, good afternoon, all. I'm Dr. Amy Sharma. I'm the Executive Director of Science for Georgia. I'm here just to talk about the science a little so you guys kind of understand what's in untreated sludge. My parents are very proud of my degree. The main headline here is that untreated or improperly applied sludge is going to end up a human, livestock, and environmental health hazard. Everyone has said this before, properly treated, properly applied soil amendments are an absolute good thing. And I want to talk about another thing. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about industrial byproducts and wastewater treatment plants being biosolids, aka sludge. So what is a soil amendment? It's not fertilizer. We keep hearing this, but only soil amendments, they're only allowed to change the underlying physical property of the soil. So they're not allowed to make nutrient claims. And it must be applied via injection under the soil. If they're making nutrient claims, it has to be called a fertilizer, right? And so the amendments here and the regulations here are only about soil amendments. Where does this sludge come from? Industrial byproducts are waste devised from living matter such as fat traps in restaurants, waste from food processing, and leftovers from slaughterhouses. Both of these things have a lot of great and terrible things in them. The trick is to remove the terrible and keep the good. So in untreated sludge, you've got an abundance of nutrients and water and fat, and they're like a pathogen generating playground. You're getting salmonella, bacteria, mad cow disease, foot and mouth disease. The sludge also has these heavy metals, which we heard about heavy metal poisoning. This causes thyroid problems, kidney problems, damages the nervous system, and causes birth defects. And then there's the emerging concern of PFAS in this. So when people talk about cows coming along behind these sludge spreaders, or when sludge ends up not where it was supposed to be, think of what your meat and dairy supply is eating. Man, just saying, don't do it. You're all gonna die.
Thank you. Gordon Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time. I understand constraints. My name is Gordon Rogers. I'm riverkeeper for the Flint, and I'm speaking today for the Georgia Water Coalition. I think two things are obvious here. One is that the industry, in particular the food processing industry, needs a way and they need places to get rid of this waste. That's very important for the industry, for their profits, for jobs in Georgia. We're number one in many agricultural areas, and we want to stay that way. I think the second thing that's obvious here is that we're not talking about potting soil and putting it on the ground. We're talking about something else entirely. And what I wanted to share with you is not my knowledge of this waste stream, because as far as I know, this is not happening in the Flint watershed. Maybe it is, but nobody's complained to me. What I want to speak to you very briefly about is the importance of a good legal construct for dealing with the waste stream. And I'm going to give you 3 examples. In the city of Albany, we're dealing with some sewer issues right now. We're in a big sewer reconstruction program that's been mandated by EPD, and that's because we have excellent laws to deal with sewage discharge. We have not had to sue over this because there's excellent case law and there's excellent Georgia law and excellent federal law on that topic. Similarly, recently in Lee County, just north of Albany, we had a lot of dirt coming off of a brand new solar site. A lot of dirt going on people's private property and in the creeks there. The LIA, the local issuing authority, Lee County, and Georgia EPD got to work along with the landowners and riverkeeper, and within 3 weeks we had solved that problem. And it's no longer bleeding dirt because we have good laws. In Upson County, not too long ago, we got a major Clean Water Act court settlement because we had some bad laws with a land application industrial system. And immediately after that court settlement, EPD went back and revised the way that they did that. And now we're not having those problems. What Mr. Leverett is doing, and we really appreciate it, is he's putting us on the track to some good laws. We can get there and solve this problem. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask Tanya to come up, and she can pronounce her last name for me. I've got the Tanya part.
Giveaway. Thank you. I'll be brief. My name is Tanya Bonatatabas. I'm your Savannah Riverkeeper. I've known and been dealing with this issue for 12 years. In fact, the first call I ever received was the recently retired Representative Charles Mann, who used to, I guess Leverett now sits in his seat, and he found himself next door to on the Broad River Valley Farms. What has transpired over the last 12 years really started in White County and on the Broad River in Elbert County as a process of taking previously EPD managed waste, recycling it, right, adding the label of recycling, and then shifting it over to ag. As we have gone on, the numbers of soil amendments have increased greatly in the state. We're now at 550 that the Ag Department regularly certifies. The problem is that throughout that process, as things have shifted over, transparency never came with it. So nobody knows who good actors or bad actors are because you can't get feedback from the Ag Department of even where these locations exist because they're not monitoring them. They give a certificate and then they're not necessarily following up with where those locations exist. You were given a packet today. If you look in it, there's a map. My office manages that map. We collect it, and as far as we know, there's 120 or so sites just in the Savannah and the Ogeechee watershed. That is more than the Ag Department lists currently today. So what I'm hoping is that through this legislation, what's happening is, one, fiscally responsible transparency. I don't think it makes sense to increase and have 20 people working in the Ag Department on this one issue. It makes much more sense to find ways to partner with those who are in the community. And then the other is by copying the timber harvesting and creating access, people will actually know what's going on. And if a community member, or not a community member, but an elected official or a local municipality can know whether a site is actually registered or not, that'll go a long way to cutting out bad actors. Ooh, there we go. I'm done. Thank you very much.
All right, and now we will switch over to Mike Giles with the Georgia Poultry Federation, if he will come to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Mike Giles. I'm with the Georgia Poultry Federation. First, I'd like to thank Representative Leverett we've had a good, open, transparent dialogue, and we look forward to continuing it. We appreciate it, Representative. Soil amendment program is very important to the poultry industry, and I would say that poultry's been mentioned a lot, but there are other sources of soil amendments from other types of industry sectors, so just keep that in mind. But it is very important to us. We believe that compliance with the rules of the Georgia Department of Agriculture and laws of the state of Georgia is critically important. We support a robust enforcement program at the Georgia Department of Agriculture. We believe they should be well funded, and we're pleased that at this point in the appropriations process, additional funding has been made available to the department for this purpose. I've visited these application sites and I've seen firsthand the benefit that can come to agricultural land and agricultural crop production when this is done properly. I would encourage any of you that's interested in doing this to do the same. I'd be glad in the off season to facilitate a visit. I go along with you, and I think that the exchange of information and seeing it on the ground would be very important. I'll close with that. I think there are a number of two representatives of Denali who will be here, who's one that handles the majority of the byproducts that come out of the poultry industry, and they'll have some information to share as well.
We have one question.
Yes, sir.
We'll hold this 30 seconds. One question. Number 12.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. You mentioned that possibly trying to visit a site.
Yes, sir.
So we would go through one of these county commissioners and visit one of the sites.
We'd love to have them come with us. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, next we have Glenn Dowling, Denali.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Representative Leverett, thank you for what you're doing. My name is Glenn Dowling. I'm the Southeastern Operations and Sales Support for Denali. Appreciate the opportunity today to just introduce you to Denali Water Solutions. As Mike told you, we're an integral part to a lot of different agricultural processes. We repurpose and recycle multiple streams of residual streams, organic residual streams that include municipal drinking water and wastewater residuals and food processing residuals. We operate in the lower 48 states and Puerto Rico in an effort to reduce society's dependence and reliance on landfills, to reduce carbon and methane impacts on the environment, reduce water consumption, provide American farmers an alternative to expensive chemical fertilizers, support our processing and supply chain, and help stabilize food costs to our customers. Our focus is to assure highly valuable organic residuals and nutrients are not thrown away, but beneficially recycled or repurposed as fuels, feeds, or fertilizers. We live by an old adage, waste not, want not, and with high cost of chemical fertilizers, there's an exponential increase in demand for organic alternatives from farmers across the nation. To meet this demand, Denali works with state agencies and regulators to assure regulatory compliance, environmental protection, and safety is our highest priority. We extend an invitation to all of you to visit one of our field operations. We would welcome you, and or we can visit with you in your respective offices so we can fully describe the residuals recycling landscape throughout Georgia or the United States. So thank you for your public service. We understand the time it takes away from your business and families to serve all of Georgia, and we will have our business cards and contact information available. And with that, you'll get to hear from David Coyle. He's our Southeastern Senior Environmental Manager. Thank you.
We do have one question, number 15.
Really quick, what is the process of these application sites? Do individuals, farmers, do they apply for this, and how are they designated become these sites for these applications of your product?
A lot of times it's word of mouth advertising from farmer to farmer that want the residuals as a supplement to their nutrient management planning. It's highly successful on cattle farms and forage operations. We see a great production rate.
But for tracking purposes, sorry to interrupt, but for tracking purposes for like Department of Ag, where y'all are applying this, is there an application process that they apply to your company for the product? Then it is then that the Ag Department keeps up where your product is going?
We track where we are. I don't know. David can probably speak to the exact records kept by the Department of Agriculture. I'll let him speak to that. But we keep track of every acre and where we are and what's applied. Yes.
All right. Thank you. David Coyle.
My name is David Coyle. I'm with Denali. I am a soil scientist, certified crop advisor. I'm not here to advocate, right? There's certainly not enough time for me to go into all this in detail with 2 minutes. I just want to let y'all know that I'm a resource for information, and I'm willing to have sit down and have candid conversations with anybody in this committee and anybody in this room if they simply reach out. I've been with, our company's been doing this for 22 years in Georgia in plain sight, and I've been through all the different regulatory structures. We were originally under EPD permits and then transitioned to Department of Agriculture, and I think now we're under the third iteration of rules. And I also operate in all the southeastern states, so I'm familiar with the other regulatory programs that surround this state and the comparable rules that are there. I feel like the rules that are in place now, the new rules, are fundamentally sound. All the major components are there. We have a new administration in Department of Ag. They seem committed to solving this issue. They need the time and the resources and the funding to do so. And I feel like if that is done, then we can eliminate some of these problems, which I think has already been concluded that there are some bad actors out there, right? So, anyway, I'm open for any questions or any information y'all would want to know.
Can you speak to what's in a soil nutrient management plan? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the nutrient management plans that are required by the state are basically constructed off the boilerplate nutrient management plans that are designed for CAFOs and AFOs, animal feeding operations, minus a few components like we don't need to know, chemical storage, and there are no, lagoons or treatment facilities on most of these sites that are associated with that. It's basically just nutrient management 101, right? We analyze the material, we determine the nutrient content, we determine what the crop rotation is going to be through extension references. We figure out and soil samples, right? We figure out what the nutrient requirements of that crop are going to be. We have calculations we can run that through and set agronomic rates for these products, and then we apply them at agronomic rates based pretty much on the nitrogen content. So each site is required by the new rule to have a site-specific nutrient management plan that must be updated continually if you're going to apply there year after year, right? So yeah.
And help me, I'm trying to remember. I mean, we passed rules and laws in 2020 and 2021 dealing as far as if a soil is saturated. Is there something in rules and regs now that would prevent they should or should not put it on there if that land won't perk? Is there something in the rules and regs now?
There are two items in the rules right now that address that. Number one, you are not to apply to saturated ground, which I believe is described as soil that water is ponded at the surface, or if you step on it or track over it, that water would squeeze out. And then the other one addresses not to exceed in the nutrient management plan part. The nutrient management planner is supposed to make a technical determination of what the hydraulic loading rate of that soil is, and not to exceed those rates for the application.
A lot of the people have spoken. That's what I've been trying to take notes here. And it's talking about abuse, putting it on saturated soil, or either putting it up the wrong way instead of injecting it, spraying it on top of the soil.
Just for reference, so 2 million gallons on 100 acres sounds like a lot, right? That's actually 3/4 of an inch of water when you spread it out over 100 acres. And it takes a considerable amount of time to apply that, right? So if you think the water, 3/4 of an inch of water is certainly not beyond the assimilative capacity of most soils in the state of Georgia to absorb, right? So once you crunch the numbers, things become more clear.
Does anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you. We do have one more person that's signed up to speak. If he, Jake Matthews.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for letting me be here with you today. My name is Jake Matthews, and I'm here representing Georgia Farm Bureau. We are a grassroots farm organization that represent farmers all across our state, folks that grow and produce every single crop, commodity, livestock that's here in our state, and we are a grassroots organization. All of our members, they're farmers across the state. A priority issue for us, and something that is not necessarily addressed by this piece of legislation, but something we bring up every single time this issue is addressed, is that it is a priority issue for us to ensure that the use of litter, raw animal manure, and things like that are not lumped in with the soil amendment. That's already been said here today and has been addressed, but that's something that's, like I said, a priority issue for Georgia Farm Bureau. We as an organization, our members want to ensure that we maintain the integrity of the soil amendments program. And like it's already been mentioned, we want a robust enforcement setup for this program. Our members don't want to live next to a bad actor either. That's not something that they want at all, and it's something that's expressed to us frequently. But we believe that when this is done correctly, when it's done in accordance with law, rules, and regulations, this is a critical and beneficial program. We do have some concerns with allowing local government to be the enforcement mechanism for this, whereas that's been something that's been vested with the Georgia Department of Agriculture since the start, and so we do have some concerns over that. We are very pleased to see money in the budget right now that's still being worked on and moving forward for this program to try and make it even more robust, and we fully support that and think that more than adequate funding needs to be put into this. We also think that the newly promulgated rules need time to play out, but we really are appreciative of Chairman Leverett for his work on this. He's been super open. His door's been open the whole time. We've had quite a bit of discussion with him, and we look forward to continuing to do so as we go forward.
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, there is a letter in everyone's packet from the Commissioner of Ag. I don't know if everybody has that letter. And basically, he's saying, he just took office January 12th, and in another letter that he sent to the Ag Committee, Ag Senate and House Ag Committee, he promised he'd work hand in hand, be proactive to address these issues. Absent any objections from our team at the Department of Agriculture, plans to move forward with a 90-day review and examination of the newly promulgated rules regarding soil amendments. Basically, the gist of it, I think would like to have time to, the rules just went into effect January 1st, 2023, to do the review and then come back to us if that's what we have is not working. The $550,000 which the House has put in the budget to help enforce these rules and regs, I think will go a long way. If we can, it's the bad actors. It apparently gives everybody a bad name. But you've got the letter in your packet, number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was only when you're through, you raised a great point. I just want to mention, first of all, I want to say this. It's interesting to me that, I think everyone in this room recognizes the importance of soil amendments for a very important industry. We're number one in the country in poultry, folks, I think. And again, this issue is not just about poultry. So it's interesting to hear that. It's also interesting to hear everybody here believes we need adequate enforcement. And so I was glad to hear that. I want to thank my friend, Representative Leverett, for bringing what I believe is a very balanced measure. Very moderate, very balanced, to try to find a solution to this problem. And so the only thing I would say, Mr. Chairman, is this. I have also talked to our Ag Commissioner that I have great respect for and friendship with. I think I love the idea of him doing this, but I believe that this report needs to be available and transparent and open to the public. So I would like to advocate strongly that we make that fully aware to everybody on all sides so we get very clear information on how to proceed. And I'm real proud of the work that the House did to fund 2 new individuals for soil testing to the Department of Agriculture. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I wrote that down as well. Make sure we get feedback on what's being done. So we absolutely need that to happen. At this time, Rob, we got 5 minutes if you'd like to come up and close us out, or.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't anticipate using that time. I just wanted to address 1 or 2 issues that were raised. First of all, I do want to thank Georgia Farm Bureau, and I want to thank the Poultry Federation and Denali for their collaboration and assistance with this. I value getting input for people who actually do it on the ground and do it right to make sure I don't mess things up for them. My predecessor would have an issue with me if I did that, and so I don't desire to do that. I also want to make it clear, it's our understanding that the nutrient management plans don't actually get filed, but they do have to be maintained by the person applying them. And I don't desire to change that. I think changing that might be overburdensome on the industry, but it is important that they maintain it, and Denali, I think, does a good job of that. Also, I want to thank the Poultry Federation and Farm Bureau for the assistance on advocating for the addition of those funds to the ag budget. But to Tanya's point, I don't know that we can hire enough people or fill up that building with enough people to adequately enforce. The issue that we have is not with the rules, not with the substance of the rules. It's just with the ability to enforce them adequately over a state as big as Georgia. And we feel like the bill that we filed would give the Department of Ag an inexpensive way to do that effectively. And I think that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate so much your time and the committee's time today, and everyone's participation. I think this is an important issue. It is a vital program, but we need to make sure we are enforcing the rules fairly so that the program can continue to be healthy and to thrive.
We do have one question, Vice Chair Smith, Vance Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just thinking of this product that's coming from an industry and it's going to be put on a farm, is any of that ever tested in any way that they can say, well, this load of this batch is so contaminated that we're not going to be able to put it on a farm, you're going to have to take it somewhere else? Is that ever done?
I'm not aware that it's tested in any fashion where the Department of Ag can verify that what is being applied is what is representing is being applied. And that's been, I think, a concern of a lot of folks who are concerned about the state of the program, is that we don't, I have heard that the Department of Ag individuals told someone, well, this is largely the honor system. You know, we don't draw a sample or test what's being applied. They do have to keep records about what's being applied, and I feel that most of the time, if not a vast majority of the time, they're being accurate on there, but we're concerned that some of these actors may not always be completely forthcoming in exactly what's being applied. And a little bit more background, our understanding is that as part of the soil amendment program, you have to register the soil amendment with the Department of Agriculture. If you don't and apply it, at that point you are basically applying waste, and you may have to deal with EPD action. But if you're applying something that's a registered soil amendment, then that's the Department of Ag's business.
Yes,
I guess I'm just thinking, if you start at the source and if you catch it and it's bad, it doesn't ever make it to the ground, doesn't make it to the farm,
Yes.
doesn't make it to the stream. But if we don't test it in any way, we're just taking, well, I'm telling you that mine's good,
Well, and that's been our concern. We had proposed to allow counties to do some testing because we've got extension agents. Counties are willing to staff people to do this and to train them, and they would, I think, need training from Ag too. But I think that was viewed as a bit burdensome, and so we did not end up keeping that in this bill. It initially did provide that was one thing the counties could do. We do feel like there needs to be some sort of confirmation that what's being applied is truly what is represented is being applied, but we've yet to figure out exactly how to crack that nut. But thank you for the question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for bringing the bill. Thank you for everybody that came today. Good meeting, good information. At this time, if there are no further questions or comments, we will adjourn the meeting. It's hearing only. And we'll turn it over to, I think the next meeting is standing at the door. And if, thank you.